Welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a second as some more people join in from the waiting room. All right, it looks like we're all here now. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bonnie Dubois and I am an Associate Director in the Office of Alumni and Family Engagement. And on behalf of our office and the college, we just want to welcome you and thank you for spending part of your day with us. We are very excited to have Donna Peters with us today. But before we get started, just a few Zoom housekeeping tips. We will keep the participants on mute throughout. So please, whether you're dialing in on a phone or your computer, make sure that you stay muted. But we will take questions throughout as well. So you can type your questions directly to me in the chat box. And again, that's Bonnie Dubois. And depending on how many join, we may unmute some or just do chat. So we'll be flexible with that. But without further ado, I would love to introduce Donna Peters, class of '89. She is founder of the Me Suite, which is career coaching for executives. And thank you so much, Donna, for being here. I will turn it over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I run around looking for excuses to interact with Davidson people, and it's fun to see some familiar faces and some new ones. And I think we have broader community folks in here. I just got a wave. Hi, Bruce. We have a broader community here that are, call it friends and family of Davidson. So it's nice to have you here too. If we do have this smaller, more intimate group, I'll probably do a little bit more interactivity. If we do get a little bigger, we'll probably rely more on the chat just to respect your time. So if I could ask the group, if you could give me a thumbs up if my volume is okay. Thumbs up already. Thank you. I am going to be projecting my screen here, and also if you could give me a thumbs up when you can see it, that would be very helpful. So I'm now supposed to be sharing, and you see it. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's start with the fun stuff. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me from our Davidson career, I want to introduce myself as a proud member of the Davidson family, myself, class of '89, and what became my husband after I asked him out on a date the first week of his freshman year is Jonathan Darcy. And Davidson is still a very important part of our lives and a very important part of our estate planning, although I do choose to spend every dime before I'm gone, but maybe Davidson will get lucky and have something left. We'll see. But Davidson is a priority for us in our hearts and minds. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a peek into resources available after this call. If we latch onto something that you find of interest and you want to discuss it a little bit more. When I left Davidson, I was a professional actor for about 10 years after that with an MFA, and then I went and got an MBA at Cornell and went deep undercover in corporate America for 20 years and retired from that in January. When I retired, I started a business called the Me Suite. The website on this slide. And I make it available. There's a lot of free stuff there. If you're interested in anything that sparks a little flair for you today, on the right-hand side of the slide is the free stuff. I have a podcast series that's all around career coaching. We have about 70-ish interviews with career-driven, life-minded people from every walk of not-for-profit to corporate, entrepreneur, big business, small business, different levels in their career and interests. And it's interviews with these people so you can get different perspectives from a lot of different angles, and that is fully available free. We will have about 100 episodes there posted by the end of the year, and it's available wherever you get podcasts. The other one is a career coaching blog, which is on the website, where we talk about some of the most popular or trending questions that I get about career management. And then also I do career coaching and I do faculty and workshops and things like this. But this is a resource available for you if you find it helpful after I talk. But today we are talking about a concept that is called options are power. And it's not a phrase that I invented because I thought it was cute. It's actually grounded in neuroscience. And the concept is that we have scientific evidence that the brain scans for threats every 1/5 of a second. We also know that there are 5 times more neurocircuits in your brain oriented to threat detection than there are to reward detection. And so basically what this means is that bad things are stronger than good things when it comes to the way that your brain is processing. And so the reason that I like to orient around options for people in my career coaching is that options give us a sense of being in control, because options allow us to be running to something and not from something. And when you have a mindset of running to something, not from something, you have a greater sense of control, less of a sense of loss. And so you naturally are more in a positive mindset than a threat detection mindset, which is the brain's natural tendency. The other reason that I love options or power is just the definition of the word. I was an English major and I love words. And options mean that you have the right, not the obligation, to make a change. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. Hopefully you attended the right session. You know, when you get on the airplane and they make sure that you're really going to Tulsa, are you really here for options or power? That's what we're here to talk about today. All right. So under the umbrella of options or power, options give you the right, not the obligation, to make a change. I see it and define it as 4 disciplines that are required to come together to create a surround sound of options in your life. They are, I'll start at 1 o'clock, people, skills, finances, and health. People meaning the people you choose, operative word being choose, to bring into your life. Skills meaning the things that you do today very, very well, and how do you think very flexibly about that, and the things that you want to be building to be relevant in the future that you want. Finances are not, it's not about making a lot of money. It's about being knowledgeable about money. We're pretty good at balancing checkbooks, knowing money coming in and out, and making budgets, but we're often very poor at understanding implications of things like taxation, or the total cost of ownership of owning a home versus renting, for example. And then health, pretty obvious, intuitive one. There's a lot of things about our health that we cannot control, but the things that we can, please do control them. So the 4 disciplines that allow you to build that surround sound of options, people, skills, finances, and health, must all come together. And today, because we are talking more specifically about career choices, career change, career options, we're going to spend our time on the dark blue right side and talk more specifically about the people and the skills components. Before I go further, do we have any questions? I think this group is small enough you could just even come off mute if you wanted. Is that right, Bonnie? They could just come take themselves off mute?
We're at about 60 now, so we've grown, but
Okay.
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going, but I'm happy to take interruptions. I was a professional actor, and there's not a lot that you can do that I can't handle. All right. Okay, let's go. Keep going. So I want to break down people and skills a little bit further, give us a little bit of a common vocabulary for talking about people and skills. By people, I mean your network, and I mean your personal board of directors. A lot of people cringe at the word network because it sounds a little manipulative, like you're reaching out because you want something from another person. But here by networks, I mean the people that you choose to surround yourself with to help you achieve what you're trying to achieve, and also to help other people. I'll talk about that in a moment, and we'll go into detail on all of these things. The other one is your personal board of directors. Just like companies have a personal board of directors to keep that company oriented to its North Star, we need the same thing for our own personal lives, our own personal objectives. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how do you assemble your own personal board of directors to achieve your goals. And then similarly under skills, we're going to talk about one of my favorite words, fungibility. We're going to talk about how we could be thinking more fungibly about the skills that we do have to give yourself more career options so you aren't being so painfully literal about your skill set. If you think more fungibly about your skill set, it can open up some new opportunities for you. And we'll also talk a little bit about your personal brand and what it means to marshal, well, first of all, what it means to have a personal brand, and then what it means to marshal a brand if you are thinking about a career change. All right. And in the spirit of being practical, I do like to think aspirationally and have big goals, but at the end of the day, we need tangible things that we can start doing differently on Monday. And so in each of these items around people and skills, I'll have a little bit of a Monday nudge for us to challenge us to start doing something differently on Monday if we are interested in creating more career options. All right. So I'm going a little bit in reverse order. I'm going to start with skills and give you 2 tips that are related to building options by thinking differently about your skills. And then we'll do the same thing for people. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, I believe. So under skills, I mentioned before, having a mindset of fungibility, thinking more fungibly about your skills. And I mentioned defining your brand. And there are 2 things that you can do now, the moment we hang up from this phone call, if you'd like. Very, very practical things that you can do to start building career options around the skills area. Let's talk about defining your brand first. A brand is what people think when they hear your name. So think about that for a moment. A brand is what people think when they hear your name. And I encourage you to do with flip charts or Post-it notes or a blank sheet of paper, but something very low-tech, high-touch. Take a low-tech, high-touch approach to writing down all of the elements that come to your mind when you think about your personal brand. And start to look for the common elements. Maybe they cluster, maybe some of your list are more synonyms that can cluster into a certain area, maybe because you are extremely reliable, you deliver on your promises, you do what you say. And all of those elements can cluster into a common bucket called reliable. And maybe there are other elements about your brand that are about skills that you have or the way you make other people feel special. Maybe it's areas of knowledge and expertise. But I encourage you to take a low-tech, high-touch approach to getting all of those ideas down so that you can define for yourself what is your personal brand. And your brand is not what you wish you were. Your brand is how people currently think of you when they hear your name. And then similarly, I would like for you to do an exercise that is helping you think more fungibly about your skill set. And I find liberal arts trained people are fabulous at this because you find connections in a lot of disparate areas. You make order out of chaos and you're able to pull from all these disciplines and find stories to tell. And let me tell a story to illustrate my point, because I think it's sometimes a little easier to give you an example of what do I mean by thinking more fungibly about your skills. I mentioned before that I spent 10 years as a professional actor and then went into management consulting out of business school. There were many companies that wouldn't even interview me because my resume was this professional actor background. They probably thought I didn't even know how to use a calculator. And they wouldn't even interview me, give me a chance. But there were some who were intrigued enough by it to give me an interview. And what I chose to do in those interviews was draw a line between what on earth about that previous theater experience was relevant for a consulting client service job. And the story I told was, well, what is a skill as an actor? A skill as an actor is you spend every single day putting yourself in the shoes of another person, thinking about a situation from their point of view. Why do they think as they do? Why do they have the fear that they have? Why are they communicating in the way they're communicating? and really being empathetic to the client's situation. That's what an actor does every day when you are thinking about characters and roles. And I would tell how that skill will be relevant for my client service as a consultant who is there to advise and influence and motivate someone to make a change because maybe the business is failing, or they have a business challenge, or they're stuck in a rut and need to grow. So it was an example of how I took a skill that on a sheet of paper may not seem relevant and told a story about how it was directly relevant if I applied it in a new area. And some of you, let's say some of you may have a more analytical or an accounting background, but you want to get out of accounting. You never want to see balance sheets again. What relevant fungible skills could you have? If you have a past that is in more of accounting, you are a problem solver, you love puzzles, you are probably fabulous at forensics, and you're probably extremely detail oriented. And all of those skills have relevance in a lot of different areas that would maybe even have absolutely nothing to do with accounting. So 2 things under skills: defining your brand so that you really understand how you're showing up in the universe, whether it's people that you're meeting, whether it's what your LinkedIn profile looks like, or it's the stories that you're telling. What is your brand? And then separately, how can you start to think more fungibly about your skill sets? Because that could be an opportunity to open up different career options that you right now may have a closed mind about. And then the Monday nudge for this area of skills is test your brand with 3 people that you trust in your life. I encourage you to balance it with maybe people that really know you very, very well personally, and people that are more corporate or work-life oriented in your world. But pick 3 people that you trust to have your best interests in mind, and test with them what you put down when you got the Post-it notes or the scrap sheet of paper and you started brainstorming what are the brand elements that define your brand. Test that list with 3 people you trust. What I believe will happen is 90% of that list will be exactly the same as those other people that you trust. They might have used some synonyms, but the themes and the core essence of your brand will likely be the same. And you'll probably hear a couple of things that are new that you didn't truly appreciate about yourself and the way that other people see you showing up in the world. So that's that's an action that you can take differently on Monday. And the second one is to tell a story to someone about a fungible skill that you have. There might be something where you think you're stuck in a box, or you've been working so much in a particular area that you can't possibly be relevant in another part. And challenge, is that true? And make yourself tell a story about how a skill that you have is fungible and relevant in an area that might right now seem like a wild leap. Because the more you practice the story and you practice the connections, the better you get at it, number one, and the more that you truly start to believe it. And it'll start to open up some other career options for you if you're still thinking to yourself, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. Can I do this? Can I do that? Define your brand. Have a mindset of fungibility about your skills.
Donna,
Okay.
we have a couple of questions.
Go
The
for it.
first is, how many descriptors should you have on your brand list?
I like this question. When you're first starting to do the get it all down on Post-its or get it all down on paper, don't limit yourself yet. Don't be a filter. Don't be a judge. Just get it on paper. And then step back and look for synonyms where you might be able to cluster some. Like I mentioned, am I reliable? Do I do what I'm going to say? I'm always on time. That might cluster into one category called reliable. And then also filter it by, is that really what I do or what I wish I did? So try to put a little bit of a filter on your list after you've created the brainstorm version of, is it really what you do or what you wish you did? And that helps you synthesize and clean up the list. But in your final version, you will probably land on about 4 to 6 things if you're really being disciplined about not having synonyms. So try to land on about 5 to 6.
And the next question is, do you have an opinion on the value of StrengthsFinder and or DISC in general relative to one another?
Yes. So I love assessments. Full stop. I love them. I'm a certified StrengthsFinders coach. I'm not a DISC coach, although I've done DISC and I'm familiar with it. I love them. If you have done those before, study them. I do think that there's value in them. And whoever asked the question, let me know if you're interested in talking about what specifically about those things inform your brand. I'll give you an example just because the group is big right now, but you can find me later if you want to talk in more detail. Your brand is not necessarily what your strengths are. So just because StrengthsFinders or DISC is telling you what your natural tendencies are, that does not necessarily mean that that's the way you're being perceived by other people. And so that's why I suggest that you test your brand with 3 people that you trust. Because something that you may have innately may not be the way that you're perceived externally, if that makes sense.
We have another question
Okay.
related. Is there a benefit in asking others first what they think when they hear my name before starting on my own list?
Yeah, I prefer you don't, although I can't control what you do. I prefer you don't, because I do think that there's a lot of value in some self-reflection of what you would first have come up with. And then when you are testing it with other people, you'll have a little bit more grounding in what you intuitively already knew was true about yourself. So I do prefer that you do it in this order of yourself first before you ask others, but it won't hurt you if you do it the other way around. It won't be painful.
Those are all the questions for now.
Okay, thank you. I love questions. All right, let's now go to the people side of the pie. Similar structure. I have some ideas for how to think about people differently so that you can be building career options for yourself, and then I'll have a Monday nudge. So under people skills, there are 2. One of them is nurture your network, and the other one you'll remember was build your personal board of directors. And in the career space, you cannot escape LinkedIn. It is absolutely by far the de facto networking tool if you are in the market to think differently about a career change, maybe launching your own business, joining a new company. You cannot avoid LinkedIn. It is the tool. And so when I say nurture your network, sometimes I mean within the LinkedIn platform, and I also just mean in your human networks. So think about your network as people who can do the following that I have here on a checklist. Sometimes they are people who open doors for you because maybe they have knowledge or relationships in an area where you want to gain more knowledge. And so they can help open doors for you to get those discussions started. Other people might be there to give you advice. Maybe they have an experience because they've started a business before and you're thinking of starting a business. And you want to ask them what are the top 3 lessons you learned, and they're just there to give advice. Some people in your network are there to listen out. They can't directly help you with something, but because of the network they have or the circles that they travel in, they might be able to be ears for you, listening out for opportunities because they know what you're interested in looking for. Other people in your network are just there to pump you up. They really don't have the knowledge that you maybe need. They don't have experience in the area that you're trying to grow, but they know you and they have your best interests in mind. And they're just there to pump you up and get you through some of the mood swings because there'll be some ups and downs through the process. Sometimes there are people in your network who are just there to tell you that your baby's ugly. And so if you're practicing your introduction or you are asking someone to review your resume or you want to know, is this the appropriate way for me to show up on a Zoom video interview? It's someone in your life who is grounded enough in your best interest that they can tell you that your baby is ugly. And it sometimes is the advice that you need to hear when you're making a change like this. And then honestly, the last one is shed. And it's maybe the hardest one. There are some people in your network that you probably shouldn't have because they are toxic and they are working against the goals that you're trying to achieve. And so as you're thinking about nurturing your network, think about this checklist of people that you choose. And I said choice is the operative word. You are completely in control of this exercise. And when you have a sense of control, remember you have a more positive mindset from the neuroscience perspective. And so you feel more powerful when you're in control. You are fully in control of all of these elements of nurturing your network. And so do it. Where do you need to rekindle a relationship with someone? Where do you need to reach out? And it feels so awkward to a lot of people, again, because sometimes people feel that this is a little manipulative. And if you are the type of person who thinks networking as a little slimy and it feels a little manipulative, I will leave one challenge in your mind. Think for a moment about a time that someone asked you for your advice. They called you up, Kim, and they said, I need your advice about XYZ. And give me a thumbs up if it felt good, Kim. I can see you on my camera. It felt good, didn't it? It feels great when someone calls you and asks for your advice. Remember how that feels. It feels so good. And so if there are people in your network and you are wanting to reach out to them to test an idea, to have them review a resume, to ask them to open a door for you because you're on the job market, people want to help people. You know how good that feels. And so don't feel shy about it and have no apologies. Just obviously you're going to be respectful and you're not going to be abusive of people's time, but no apologies. People like to help people. And then on the personal board of directors side, I mentioned this earlier, that companies all have boards of directors. And it's a group of people who basically the CEO reports to. A CEO reports to the board of directors in publicly held companies. And there's a similar concept here, an analogy that I think we should be applying to our own lives, marshaling our own career, of what 3 to 4 people do you want on your own personal board of directors to give advice about your career objective, to pump you up about that running to something, not from something, or do you need them there to tell you that your baby's ugly? This is a group you bring together, not 3 to 4 people in a room together, but you do assemble them for your own board and reach out to them one-on-one as needed over a period of time, depending on what your goal is. This might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be a whole year. It's not a lifetime appointment. So depending on what your career goal is, think about who the 3 to 4 people that you want to surround yourself with, and you reach out to them, you tell them what you need, they agree to do it or not, and then they become part of your personal board of directors for ongoing advice. I had a personal board of directors when I set up the Me Suite, for example. And it included friends of mine who I needed to tell me that the baby was ugly. It included people who had started businesses before where I wanted some startup advice. And it included some more technical expertise because I was heavily podcasting and had never done that before. So I decided those were the main things I needed externally to shore up my weaknesses, and just think about what yours would be, and then surround yourself with those people. So my Monday nudge for this area of people is my challenge to you. Rekindle 3 to 5 connections in your network on Monday. And these are 3 to 5 people that you know could be helpful to this career journey that you're on. And also take charge of your LinkedIn profile. So think about the personal branding conversation we had a few moments ago. Think about your skills that we talked about a few moments ago. Think about the network that is inside your LinkedIn universe. Take charge of your LinkedIn profile. Is it saying what you want it to say? Is it conveying the brand and the skills that you have and the way you want it to do that? And is it doing it to the right people? And are you really thinking positively and with a growth mindset about your network that you have on LinkedIn. If we are here today having a career conversation, you cannot run away from LinkedIn. So embrace it. Make it your friend. All right. So options are power. Remember, they are the right, not the obligation to make a change. We talked about people and skills deliberately today. They're complemented by the other components of finances and health. And what will you start doing differently on Monday to build your career options? And this is where I stop talking and we have plenty of time for questions.
There's no questions in the chat, but just did want to mention that Kathy McKenzie earlier when you were talking about StrengthsFinder and DISC and assessments, she mentioned that assessments, she's found that they really confirm what she knows about herself.
Wonderful.
And we have a question that's come in. What do you think about informational interviews?
I love them. Information, so let me define it, make sure we all have a common definition of informational interviews. So I'll use my podcast example just for clarity. When I thought I wanted to start podcasting and I had never ever done it before, I interviewed people who have podcasts. And I asked them, I said, hey, I'm interested in doing what you're doing, and I would like to learn what bumps in the road you learned from. Can I have an informational interview with you about that process and about that part of your business? And so that's an example of an informational interview. You're not asking them to get you a job. You aren't asking them to necessarily review a resume or do anything other than help you learn about what they do. And it's a chance for you to get some advice and explore different career options. Maybe you're interested in the career that they do, but after that informational interview, you're not interested in it anymore. But that's the purpose of an informational interview. Think about it as information gathering. Think about it as a chance to validate an assumption that you may have. And it always, always is an opportunity for networking. There is no such thing as an informal meeting or an informal interaction when you're networking. It may be casual, but it's not informal, because remember, you're going to have one chance to make a first impression. And so the moment you're having that informational interview, that is an opportunity for networking, making an impression, and who knows where it will go from there.
And Susan Cook says, and send a thank you note for a follow-up.
Love that one too. Yes. Send a thank you note for follow-up. And if you have a chance to get the person's physical address in some way, the handwritten note is a lost art and an incredibly special personal touch. If you find that something really needs a step up of a real appreciation, take the time to handwrite it.
Thanks. Donna, do you mind to stop sharing your screen just so we can see your face a little bit better? Thank you. Another question from Sam. Are there specific resources you would recommend to guide the process of creating or updating a LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is go play around on LinkedIn. And so you're going to start to see examples of the ones that you think are well done. You'll see examples of the ones you think look lazy. Right? It's really easy to spot a lazy LinkedIn profile, right? Where the person did just enough to put some dates in there. But first of all, when you're out there networking and you're out there looking at people that you know that are maybe in an industry that you're interested in, or they're people that are just in your network, go and see what they're doing. And first of all, use your own intuition about what you thought worked about their profile and what you thought is lacking in their profile, right? You're all extremely intelligent people. Trust your gut on that. What was effective to you when you read it? What did not work for you when you read it? And then when you do find the things you think are really, really powerful, then go put a critical eye on your own profile and what do you need to shore up. But remember, your profile needs to do a few things. It needs to communicate your brand. It needs to communicate your skills, and it needs to communicate your intention. So the other pre-work that we were talking about, our little Monday nudges, all of that is preparation for how to think about your nurturing your LinkedIn profile.
Thanks, Donna. It looks like we have some interest from getting this group connected afterwards. So we will certainly be able to share information about those who have attended today so that they can connect, whether it's LinkedIn or Davidson Connect, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. But thank you, Kathy. That's a really great suggestion. We do have a couple more questions. Let's see. Do you have an opinion or advice for those of us considering going back to school in our 50s as part of changing career direction?
Yes, I do. I went back to school at 52, as an example. My father got his undergrad degree when he was 53. So I come from a legacy of late and or lifelong learning. My husband is a full-time PhD student right now, and he's 51. So I'm a big fan of lifelong learning. My suggestion would be to informational interview. Really think about if you're going to make the investment, and sometimes you can get these things with really nice scholarships, so give that a try. If you're really making an investment to do that late learning for a significant career shift, that is a great opportunity to do informational interviews. You can go to that school and talk to the careers office about what are the types of recruiters who recruit at the school. Have informational interviews with those recruiters to make sure you really understand the opportunities that that particular school and that particular program are going to open up for you. So then the whole time you're doing the program, you have your eye on the job market, if that is the reason for the school. If the reason for the schooling is to hit a reset button on a career, make sure you're doing that in concert with the career office and the school, then the companies that recruit there. Those two things have to be tightly linked for the entire time you're studying.
We have a couple questions related back to LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah.
So do you recommend talking about only what you've done in the past or also what you're aiming to do? Just thinking about concerns of your current employer might probe questions about that.
Yeah.
And then how much detail is appropriate for your LinkedIn profile relative to your resume?
All right. I love these questions. The question about, is it all about the past or is it also about the future? The answer is both, but you do it in different ways. The LinkedIn technically is an electronic resume. And so much of the static content will be what you have done or the role you're currently in. So it's more the current state and what got me to the current state. It's not about the future. And that will be the role you currently have and the roles you've had before, the education that you've had, etc. However, LinkedIn is fabulous for what you want to be doing in the future. And the way you signal that is by the posts that you post, the shares that you share, the articles that you like, and the people that you invite to be part of your network. That's how you signal what you want your future focus to be. And so if you're thinking about LinkedIn traditionally, you're thinking about it as a static resume. You just go in there and update it today and boom, you're done. LinkedIn is a living, breathing organism. If you're in a career hunt or a career change and you're thinking differently about your skills and your network and your brand, you have your static resume content and you are finding ways to have an interaction. And the recommended one is once a day if you're in active career mode. And the interaction could be you find an article that you really like and you simply share it. It doesn't require you to do anything except hit the share button, right? Or some of you who like to write, you might start writing content that is of interest to you in a particular area where you start to generate your own content and you get a perception of being a thought leader in a certain area. And others of you just may like what other people post. And there's no one thing to do other than be active in the way you're signaling what your future interests are. Does that make sense? Yeah.
sort of just related a little bit to resume. So we have a question can you talk about automated resume review systems and how to get past them so that your applications move to the desk of the hiring manager?
Okay, and I think I missed another question though. Didn't you have two? One of them was around the past or the present, sorry, the past information of the future, but there was another piece in
It
there.
was how much detail is appropriate for a LinkedIn
Oh,
profile.
yeah. Again, you'll start to see examples from people, but in LinkedIn, there are two separate sections. There's an upfront about section that's basically a little executive summary blurb section that'll be very short. Call it 3 sentences. And then there's the resume underneath, which will be very, very similar to what you would have put on a sheet of paper if your resume were a sheet of paper. So it's the about section where you really want the haiku version, not the novel. And this is where your liberal arts communication training is really going to come in handy. That's the about section, really pithy, succinct. And then you can put more of the bulleted detail farther down below where you say things like Donna, Accenture, 1995 to 2020. And you have all the bullets of your history down there. So you'll have 2 places for both. And then the question was about the automated.
Yes.
Yeah. So some of you may know that a lot of career search companies now use artificial intelligence, and they use bots to troll through resumes electronically. And then the artificial intelligence will find Ainsley's resume and say, you really need to go talk to this guy. He's got exactly what you're looking for in this area. And what that means, because of the artificial intelligence, is your resume has to have keywords in it that trigger the bot. Because if you don't trigger the bot, you don't bubble to the top. And if you don't bubble to the top, you don't get an interview. See where I'm going? Now, I'm going to say something a little unpopular, but I'm going to say it twice because I feel so passionate about it. I have never, ever hired someone whose resume came to me from a bot. I have never, ever hired someone whose resume came to me from a bot. It's not because I won't look at them. It's just because that is the least likely place where I'm going to find the most relevant talent. The way I was interviewing and trying to find people to fill a role description was through, do you want to guess? I see, Matt, I can read the lips in the silence. It was through networking. And it wasn't a popularity contest of who knows who in the zoo. It wasn't a popularity contest. It's an awareness contest. If you are fabulous and you're the fabulous tree that fell in the forest and nobody was there to hear you, were you really fabulous? Right? So this is back to the networking piece. Absolutely work the artificial intelligence and work the bots. Get those keywords in there because A, it's free, and B, it doesn't hurt. But it is so not enough that if you're really relying on artificial intelligence and resume bots, you're going to be hurting for a long time. That is not the way people get hired. So couple it, consider it a supplement. Is that fair?
Thanks, Donna. We got lots of questions coming in. This is great. So we have a question. I found a barrier to entry in many career fields is a lack of experience in a field similar to your move from theater to consulting. Do you recommend pursuing certifications or credentials in the field of interest? And how do you get your foot in the door for initial interviews when you don't meet the experience requirement?
Yeah, so you can approach this in 2 different ways depending on how big the leap is, right? So for example, are you trying to go from a corporate job at a bank to a not-for-profit in homelessness? You probably have a lot of skills that could be directly relevant to the not-for-profit if you just thought more fungibly about the skills. That switch probably doesn't immediately require a different education or a different certification. But if there is something that you're targeting and people just aren't seeing that you're relevant for it, this is where the informational interviews and your personal board of directors comes really, it was really, really handy. Because they're the type of people who can tell you, look, I'm sorry, you're never going to break in here unless you go get your MBA. You're never going to break in here unless you go get your master's in legal something. You're never going to break in here unless you go get a certification in executive coaching or whatever it might be. But that's exactly, I love the question because it's exactly the types of questions that you're using in informational interviews and with your personal board of directors to get the doors open and to tell you your baby's ugly, right? I'm sorry, you're never going to get this thing you want. You sit here telling me you want it so bad. You've been talking about it for 10 months. You could have gotten a certification already in it, right? Go do it. But that's exactly what you're using these tips for. You've got the smart question. Just go ask them to the right people. I knew, for me, I knew from informational interviews, I knew that I could not go into the business world with the level of responsibility and what's the word I'm looking for? Credibility and just confidence, personal confidence, but also external credibility. I knew I could not do that jumping from acting into business without hitting a reset button of an MBA because my background had been so foreign to that. So in my instance, I felt and then confirmed through some informational interviews that I had to do that. But there are lots of other careers where you may just need to be more fungible about your skill definition where a formal education or certification is maybe not required.
This is a question about how do you recommend speaking with your current supervisor if you're interested in exploring options either inside or outside of your current company?
Yeah. So let me take the inside your current company first because it's a little different. If you're inside a company and you know that you've got a good, solid performance record there, your supervisor should love it when you go to them and say, I really see my future here. And I'm really committed to my future here. And I think I want to go grow skills in this other part of the business. Do you agree? And would you support me if I started looking maybe in a year from now to transition into this other part of the business to gain new skills, to build new experiences? A supervisor, if you already are solid at this company, supervisors love that because what you're doing is showing commitment to a future where you want to grow there, right? And supervisors love hungry talent. Right? You're just demonstrating hunger. So that should be a real straightforward, easy conversation. If you're an unfortunate person who has a supervisor that wants to keep their thumb on your neck and keep you down, you maybe aren't in the right company. So that would be another serious conversation to have. You may not be in the right company if you work with supervisors like that. And if you are, I'm really sorry because it's such a demotivating environment. So I hope that you're not in that company and that you can go to the supervisor and say, I'm really interested in this other part of the company. Can you help me get some exposure to it? Because maybe in a year from now, I'm interested in working over there. The other question you asked, though, was can you talk to your supervisor about opportunities outside the company? And this is where, again, the network, people you choose to surround yourself with is important. It may not be your direct supervisor. It may be a career mentor, and there are differences. There may be people inside your current organization that are very open to conversations about you leaving because they have your best interests in mind and they want you to grow and develop and do new things. And it might not be staying inside that company. And there's a lot of people who will be very open-hearted about those conversations. And I would put them more in the role of career mentor. Maybe that's also your supervisor. And if it is, you're a really lucky person. But if it isn't your supervisor, I'm sure that you'll find mentors at the company that are very open to helping you explore. If I stay, what's here for me? And is this an opportunity for me to go and do something different? If you're already in that mindset, you sound like a person that's really, really on the cusp of some fantastic informational interviews, and I encourage you to do that.
Thanks, Donna. Switching gears a little bit, this is about flexible work arrangements, which is a
Okay.
timely topic given a lot
Yeah.
of us are working from home right now. But
Yeah.
if we want to shape a career with the flexible work arrangements, but the job is not posted with that kind of flexibility, when is it appropriate to approach an employer about that desire? Do you need to prove your worth as a traditional full-time in-office worker first?
Yeah. My answer would have been so different before March. Uh, my answer before March would have been, build a personal brand of, being reliable, being good, having a future at the company, having the company's really being knowledgeable about what the company does, and then you start to go ask for favors. Right? That would have been my pre-COVID answer. My post during COVID answer is go ask for what you want. You have absolutely nothing to lose because the answer just may be no, that's not an option. Right? And if no, that's not an option is the answer, you got an answer. And then you decide, well, can I stay working here in this particular arrangement, or do I need to look elsewhere for an arrangement that will more accommodate what I want and what I need? So again, this is where the options or power thing comes in really, really handy. If you know you can't get what you want where you currently are, start casting a net so that you have other options and you're not trapped. Because if you right now find you need flexible work options and your company can't give it to you, you need some options. So start casting that net so that you can start surrounding yourself with some options and maybe have to move to something different.
I have a couple questions coming in here, kind of related to experience and resume. So, if people have life events that have interfered with their career trajectory, can you talk a little bit about how they can present those, or when it's okay to do that in their resume or interview process to help explain that?
Yeah, I find and certainly only communicate what you're comfortable communicating. That is your personal decision. I do find that in the last 8 to 10 years, businesses have become much more human, and we all have our own thing, right? We all have our own moment of. I personally have taken 2 leaves of absence in my career because of health problems in my family. And then other people would have had family medical leave for babies or other types of things. Um, Companies are much more human now than we maybe are giving them credit. And I think if you find out what you're comfortable sharing, and once you know what you're comfortable sharing, I would use it to explain maybe a big gap in a resume, or to explain why you might have made a wacky move at a time that might look unusual to someone. And again, this is where you start to use your network and your friends and your personal board of directors to read how is that actually being perceived in your resume, and get advice on how is that gap showing up. Does it look logical? Does it look rational? Does it look like you might have been in jail during that time? Does it look like you might have gotten fired during that time? I mean, these are real things, right? These are real things that could have happened that weren't just about, oh, I went and had a baby. So just think about and use that, pressure test it with your network of how is this being perceived, and then it'll help you refine the language. But I often find that getting the elephant on the table is almost always the best solution, because when you get the elephant on the table, nobody feels deception.
Thank you. Next question is getting back to resumes and those companies that do rely heavily on bots. What
Yeah.
advice do you have? For example, if federal agencies may post job descriptions without a contact, what is your advice for those situations?
Yeah, if you can find ways through your LinkedIn network and your other personal networks to find personal connections to that targeted company that you're interested in. It might be alumni connections that you make. It might be that you find someone on LinkedIn with a similar interest and you have a connection and you connect to them and ask for an informational interview. Wherever you can, try to put a human in the process. That doesn't mean that the human can get you the job, because there probably still is a formal process to follow, but the human can give you insight into the way you prepare for the interview, the way your LinkedIn profile should communicate your brand. It's just another way to get more information to be relevant and to differentiate from the other crowd of people who are only relying on the bots, right? If you're only relying on the bots, you're missing a human element to differentiate yourself.
We have one last question that I see, but we do have a couple more minutes. If there are any questions floating out there, feel free to add them to the chat. This is about LinkedIn. If you're working towards a side gig or something that could be an eventual second act, should that be on or off your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, so if you're serious about it, and it really is a business that you are promoting, I see that in LinkedIn profiles all the time. You'll see it a lot with people that have a full-time job, but then they also might have a board position. That's what's more traditional to see, where you've got a full-time job and a board position. But in the gig economy now, and with people needing to get scrappy in this wild time of COVID job market, I'm starting to see more and more people forming their own LLCs and having their own LLC consulting business that might be off to the side of their normal work. There is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, as long as you think about two things. Would your current employer be negatively surprised to see that? And if that would be a negative surprise, then be careful. And the second thing to think about is, are you confusing people about your brand? So when you're posting it, just make sure that the way you're showing up in that LinkedIn profile looks and appears logical and not wacky. So if whoever is asking that question, if you would ever like me to look at something, just send it to me. I'll be happy to give you my perspective on it. But it's a very public place, and so just be careful that you aren't negatively surprising someone who might be giving you a paycheck right now.
We had one more question come in, and this actually seems like a really good last question. So do you have any tips for staying motivated? It should be easy when you're clear on what you want, and yet, so any tips on staying motivated?
Yeah. And is this motivated about job searching? Can you type that in quickly? Is it staying motivated about job searching? Yes. All right. Thank you. Every interaction should lead to something new. So if you are sending stuff out and you're not getting response, or you are having an interview and then it's always a decline, if that's where some of the difficulty with motivation is coming from, think about every one of those interactions as an opportunity to open up another door and open up another connection, open up another part of your network, and to give you practice. It's almost like if you keep finding that you're sending stuff out and not getting anything back, or you're interviewing and not quite landing the job, all of those things are pieces of feedback. And feedback is a gift with no return receipt. So if you think about those as opportunities for feedback and to improve, it kind of puts you in more of a scrimmage mindset or a dress rehearsal mindset rather than a rejection mindset. But the truth is, you're hearing no. Back to my brain science, the neuroscience of leadership that I mentioned earlier, the brain is wired to hear no 5 times more impactfully than it hears a yes. So also recognize that your brain is wired to be taking these things in a much more overly negative way. And so it's going to be a natural tendency that we're always fighting, because that's just how we're wired. Yeah, and then remember the personal board of directors. One of the things that I advise people to do is put somebody on your personal board of directors who is there to pump you up. That's their job. So make sure you're surrounding yourself with people like that, and I think it can kind of help in some of the darker times.
Great. Well, Donna, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. We appreciate you taking the time to connect with alumni and give back in this way. So thank you. And thank you to everyone for attending. Just a few follow-up items. If you're interested in seeing our updated calendar of events, we will recommend that you visit our website. And you can also join Davidson Connect, which is our alumni directory, and you can find a full directory of alumni as well as connect with students. So I have put both our website and the link to Davidson Connect in the chat. We will also send a follow-up survey after this event to get your feedback. But thank you again so much, Donna, and everyone for attending, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, it's a very diverse group of people here, so if you need something specific, just hunt me down. I'll be happy to help.
Bye, everyone.